CityCon Part 2. My name is Tim Pospickle. On behalf of the Auburndale City Commission, I'm the mayor of the city. We'd like to welcome you. We're glad you're here today. I heard Dr. Drake last year, and I've heard Tracy, so this is going to be very exciting. We'll learn a lot today. And I want to thank Marissa for being part of putting this on. She's done a wonderful job. And I just want to welcome all the guests. I want to welcome the panel members, and we're looking forward to a great discussion.
How's everybody doing today? I'm David Simpson, retired military. I'm an ex-canine handler, father of 3. I have 2 girls. I'll be moderating for the day. I wanted to introduce all of our guests here today. To my right, we have John Marcotte, and he's the founder of Portrayed Girls. It's a comic book organization which is dedicated to empowering girls. Much of Marcotte's stories are based off his experiences as the father of 2 girls. They also love superheroes. He's been covered by several media outlets, including the Huffington Post, USA Today, and Headline News. Marcotte recently grabbed national media attention with his hashtag #MoreThanCute campaign. To the right of him is Chuck Dixon. Chuck Dixon is a well-known on the comic book convention circuit. He makes appearances in San Diego on the Comic Cons. He's written for several different things, Marvel comics, including The Punisher, Batman, Bane, Simpsons, G.I. Joe, just to name a few. He's also a best-selling author. His latest book is El Dorado, Bad Times. On the far right, we have Tracy Adams. She's the Director of Operations for Guardians of Justice. And to her left, we have Adaloria. Is that right? Adaloria, okay. She's also with Guardians of Justice. She's a member at large of the Central Florida Costume Guild, and she has 10 years of cosplay experience. In addition, she also has 4 kids, 3 of which are girls. And then to the left of her is Christina Drake. She's a professor at Florida Polytechnic University. She was a senior research engineer at Lockheed Martin Missiles and Fire Control. And that's a post that she held until 2008, or since 2008. Prior to that, she was a nanotechnology research engineer at Lockheed Martin. Dr. Drake holds 4 provisional patents. She started and co-chaired the Lockheed Martin Nanobio Working Group and is the nanotechnology editor for industrial biotechnology. So I appreciate you guys. And I just want to let you guys know to use the hashtag CityCon, that's CITYCON, on any social media posts that you guys put out there today. Just to start with some questions and some comments. Last year, Rowan Hansen of Illinois, she wrote a letter to DC Comics, and she expressed frustration about there not being enough female characters and female superheroes. The letter requested that action figures such as Hawkgirl, Catwoman, and other prominent female DC characters. She was asking for better efforts when it comes to greenlighting those projects on TV and also in the movies. She also closed by saying that girls read comics too, and they care. The letter that she wrote landed her on NBC's Tonight Show, or Today Show, and DC turned Rowan into a comic book character. Is the letter enough, and what else do you think could be done to bring attention to this matter? And I guess I would start with you, John.
Okay. Yeah, we know Rowan's letter because we found it before NBC News. It's not as big as they are, but yeah, of course the letter's not enough. The letter's just highlighting the problem that people say, hey, you can't find female action figures. Anyone who is currently looking for Rey can contribute to that if you're going to find anything from the new Star Wars film. DC actually had something in the works that they couldn't announce at that point that has really, I think, helped out. They launched with Mattel the DC Superhero Girls line, which will be coming out within the next year. And it's a completely female line of superheroes. And instead of using their already built Barbie body, which is what they had done in the past, they started from scratch. And they said, you know what, superheroes don't look like runaway models or whatever it is that Barbie exactly looks like, I'm not sure. Superheroes look like athletes, so they brought in Olympic athletes and did a 3D scan of them, and they based all the superheroes in that line on that. They have an online cartoon that is based on that series. So there have been positive steps, but certainly we're nowhere near parity. I mean, women are 50% of the population, and they're nowhere near 50% of the representation in the toy aisle as far as action figures and comics are concerned. And the readership numbers of little girls and women are just through the roof. And it's about time that we had a 50-50 split. The action figure aisle should not be a boys-only domain.
Thank you. Do you have anything to add to that?
I think that I'm not one that believes that diversity is a standalone virtue, that it isn't diversity alone that you should go for. Putting more girls into comics as lead characters and things like that, that's great, but you've got to make sure the comics are good. The audience, male or female, will read more comics, becoming more engaged in comics if the quality is there. I mean, there's nothing to stop a boy from reading a comic that features a girl, or a girl reading a comic that features a boy character. But for my money, DC needs to concentrate more on the quality of the work rather than relying on, quick fixes like an all-girl line, which sounds attractive, but if they aren't good comics, what was the point to begin with?
Just to clarify, I'm not positive there's even going to be a comic other than as a tie-in. It's a toy line. So, I mean, we're speaking specifically to the action figure segment. I do have a problem sometimes with that hard gender divide. Instead of there being a girl line and a boy line, why not just make a superhero line that has boys and girls that everybody can buy? They did a study that said that because they so heavily gendered the toy department, where every aisle is either blue or pink, that boys and girls don't play together as much as they used to. And that leads to socialization problems because the two genders don't know how to talk and how to relate to one another, because at a very young age, if they buy balls, it's either going to have a Transformer or a Disney Princess stamped on it, and they're told you can't play with the other gender stuff, and that keeps kids apart, keeps them from playing together and learning how to relate across gender lines. And so it's a little damaging to both genders, not just girls.
Well, I think you got to talk to the parents too, because Lego, their biggest problem with reaching females was parents, because girls like to play with Lego too. But Lego had to get past the parents first. There's no, those are for boys. Well, why would a bunch of interconnecting blocks simply be for boys? Why could girls build too? So it's a big success there over the past few years, broken down that barrier. Same barrier Hasbro had with G.I. Joe to begin with. Boys don't take it to owls.
Christina, great. Do you have anything to add to that, by chance? I know that, again, I know you're a professor and you have a lot of background on
Kind of along the lines of what John was saying with the gender divide at a young age. In the United States, we have a huge issue in STEM, which is science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. We don't enroll enough females in those programs, and we graduate enough females in those programs. And it starts young. Recent studies have shown that usually by the age of 5 or 6, a girl has decided her leanings towards math and science. Where before it was previously believed that that was done in middle school. And so a lot of that probably has to do with things like toys and inspiration. And so when that gender divide is made that early on, it does affect their future prospects into what type of degree they're going to get and what type of job they later on want to get. And it's a national issue. Obama has a big initiative for girls in STEM. And so it really is, it is a big problem. And even though it might sound superficial because we're talking about toys and children, it does affect their interests later on in life and their desire to do math and to learn more in science.
Thank you. Now for Christina, I'm sorry, for Adaloria and also for Tracy, I know you guys have been doing this for years. You've been a fan of comics for since you were kids, I'd imagine.
I grew up watching G.I. Joe and Thundercats and He-Man, and I played with Legos. And we didn't mention my professional life, but I'm actually a licensed surveyor now for the state of Florida. I go out and I do STEM presentations at elementary schools, middle schools, high schools. So yes, it's definitely a problem. There's a problem with the parents My 16-year-old, she is a rabid comic book fan. She draws comics, she writes comics. My 5-year-old, she's in love with John. He's her boyfriend. She's a manhunter. They have Legos in their room. So definitely, the parents are encouraging the children to go for anything and not limit themselves to, you're going to only play with kitchen stuff. Then there's definitely, I see that with myself where I'm in the STEM field and not confined to traditional women's field.
I mean, just as she said, like when I grew up, I wasn't gender stereotyped. My mom was a Barbie collector from the moment I was born. Now, we're not going to get into her collection of Barbies, but I had Barbies. I had pretty much anything in the world as far as toys are concerned. But my Barbies married He-Man, and they played with my Ninja Turtles over here. I had all of it. Like a boy or a girl would come over to my house and they would play with all of it with me. I think a lot of it has to do with how people are brought up and how their parental figures are, whether or not they're okay with buying this or that for their kid. I think it's less about there's a lot of things that aren't available, but I mean, I don't need a girl action figure in order to feel like I can play with an action figure. Like I'm okay with Iron Man. Iron Man's cool. I don't need Iron Man to be a girl for me to feel like I can be Iron Man. But I think maybe that's a little bit of a gap between the teachings that kind of happened whenever I was growing up in the 80s, where it was kind of like, well, they did spin off of She-Ra to, specifically for that purpose, to show that a woman can be a hero as well, just like He-Man, so they made them brother and sister. I like He-Man just as much as I like She-Ra. So, I mean, it's instilling in children that, it doesn't have to be a girl character or a boy character to personify with or to relate with, honestly. That's my take on it.
Do you think, have you guys seen, and this goes right away on the calendar, have you guys seen an increase, you think, with females, whether it's little girls or older women, kind of more driven, I'm sorry? Oh, have you seen like an increase in women or in girls that are going towards comic books? Have you seen like, that Comic Con, you see more women presence because of the female characters being introduced, or do you think it's just because, like Chuck was saying, better writing?
Well, when it comes to like the Comic Cons and things like that, you do see a lot more women there, but I don't know, like part of it is probably to do with the increase of viewership and things like that, but a lot of it's to do with, a lot of people just like to embrace their favorite characters and dress up. That's a lot of what the increase of comics at conventions is. Like everybody likes to be characters and dress up. I do see a lot of women that like comic books. I've never been a comic fan myself, but I have more students.
I see it more because it's no longer, you don't have to keep it in the closet, it's more socially acceptable. There's been so many TV shows about it, and you've got all the different superhero shows out now, and the cosplay shows, and it's no longer, that dirty little secret anymore. They do like comic books.
Yeah, it's not the popular decision anymore. I was growing up. Now, we were talking about earlier too, it seems like Hollywood's listening a little bit more as far as the way they're making movies and a lot of these TV shows. Now they have a new one coming out, Supergirl, stuff like that. There's Agent Carter. Game of Thrones is an entire Game of Thrones women as well. You have, Arya Stark, Brienne of Tarth, and there's a few more. What do you think this means for TV and film in the future for women? Do you think that we're going to see more of a woman presence, a more dominant type role as far as superheroes?
I'll take it. All right. Well, I mean, we're getting our first female-led superhero movies from the big two. DC is going to have Wonder Woman coming out in a few years, and Marvel is going to have Captain Marvel, one of my favorite characters, is going to come out. When Marvel puts out Captain Marvel, their first female-led movie, they will have already made more than 20 superhero movies that feature men. There will have been 3 Iron Men, 3 Captain Americas. So yeah, they did finally get to put a woman superhero-led movie out, but it took them 20 tries to do it. So I'm hopeful and a little nervous because there's a kind of a narrative in Hollywood that people won't go see action movies if they star women or people of color. That's kind of a mythology that's established and hard to shake in Hollywood. I would hope that the success of Star Wars, The Force Awakens, which starred a woman and a person of color, would shake that up. But
With the merchandising.
what's that?
There's been poor follow-through with the merchandising.
There's been horribly poor. In fact, I'm on a call with Disney on Monday because they won't talk about that. But I will say this, about, I guess, to segue into Rey. You guys are familiar with the problem of finding the main character of the new Star Wars movie on the shelf. And there's a whole hashtag, where's Rey? I think, Disney got kind of caught off guard by that because you may not even know this unless you're a huge Star Wars nerd from way back. Until this movie, Disney, well, it was Lucasfilm before, had never once even licensed a shirt for women or girls in Star Wars. If you were a girl or a woman that liked Star Wars and you were a fan, if you wanted a t-shirt, you had to go to the boys department. They didn't make them for women. They never even tried once. So they took a huge step forward with The Force Awakens. They actually made a woman the main character. And there is so much Star Wars merchandise out there that never would have existed before. There's a CoverGirl makeup line. That's certainly not aimed at me. So I mean, they could be. I'm second me personally. There's a demographic for that, I'm sure. But what I was going to say is that they even though they made all that merchandise, they didn't make enough of it. The licensors, the people who are Disney's partners in this, they made the Rey action figure, but they thought, you know what, it's going to be the boys buying action figures again. The boys aren't going to like a girl character because girls are icky. So we're going to make a ton of Kylo Ren because he's going to be the big popular character coming out of it. And they bet horribly wrong. And I hope that nothing teaches a lesson like losing tons of money and looking embarrassing, like when you put on a Monopoly Star Wars set that doesn't have the main character from the movie in it. That's pretty sad if they put on a Monopoly set that doesn't have Rey in it. When those kind of things come up and they look kind of dumb on the national media scene, I'm hoping that will drive the lesson home. And the next time out, hopefully we're going to get those characters.
Can I talk about Rey for a second too? In that, because you're talking about how many Marvel movies they had to put out about men before, and I think one of the things, it's a lot of the female characters tend to be sexualized. They tend to be romanticized, and so they're not characters that men can relate to also, or young boys. This is where Rey, I think, is different, which is why I want to talk about her, because I think that I can remember she's the first female hero that you didn't care that she was pretty, you didn't care if she had a love interest, you just wanted to know why she was Rey, and why she could be a fighter pilot, and why she could fix things, and why she was amazing, right? And can you think of the last time that a female protagonist where you didn't care about all the, and it didn't take away from the fact that she was feminine. I mean, she was still all girl, but that was not what you cared about at the end of the movie. And I think in terms of, you talked about good writing, when you write characters like that, where people it doesn't matter if you're male or female, you can look up to that character and admire that character. We need more Reys.
I can give you another one. Earlier this year, or last year now, this summer, there was a movie that came out called Mad Max Fury Road. It was deceptively titled because the movie really should have been Furiosa, Fury Road. The main character of that movie clearly was, and the driver of the plot and the protagonist that everyone identified with through the entire film was Imperial Furiosa, played by Charlize Theron. A fantastic character. There were no romantic sparks struck between her and Max in the entire film that I noticed. And that was an incredibly great, strong movie, and actually won the Motion Picture Critics Association award for Motion Picture of the Year. It's not appropriate for kids, I hate to say, but if you're an adult and you like seeing things blow up, you could do no better than seeing Mad Max Fury Road. But it is rare. It's rare enough to see, when they do put a female character in there, they feel that they have to put in a romantic subplot. They don't do that for guys. And hopefully, you know, a couple successes like Mad Max and like Star Wars will start to change that. Not that we need to eliminate romance from movies and from our lives, but every movie featuring a woman doesn't have to be about romance.
That's right.
Thank you. I noticed as a father of a girl, I think you guys are saying is spot on. And this is more of a lighthearted question, I guess. And I guess we'll start down at the end with Tracy. Your favorite female superhero, who would that be?
Favorite female superhero?
Yes.
Rogue. It had to be She-Ra. I do dress up as Black Widow a lot, not because I'm a fan of her character. I do that because my fiance does an amazing Hawkeye, so I want to be noticed too, so I might as well dress up as something to compare with him. I've never been a big fan of her character. She-Ra, however, I have dressed up as her before, and who doesn't want to be the princess of power? To be able to, you know, hold the same kind of sword that He-Man has up in the air, and get the same powers and be just as awesome, but to wear a skirt. So she's my go-to for favorite female superhero.
I'm gonna actually go with the Wonder Woman answer here, because Wonder Woman does not conform to traditional gender roles. She says her mind and she lays it out there.
Oh, and Xena.
There's a new Xena comic that just came out. There's going to be a new Xena comic book coming out within the next year.
I'm a Lucy Wallace is like my spirit animal. Like, meeting her in person was probably one of the best days of my life.
And we're a sci-fi person, so it says Starbuck from Battlestar Galactica, but now Rey from Star Wars, she's my hero.
That's right.
Barbara Gordon, Batgirl.
I think for currently published books, my current favorite is Kamala Khan, the new Miss Marvel. We have the former Miss Marvel over there, but she's a 16-year-old Pakistani-American girl that lives in Jersey City and is Muslim and is one of the most popular new superheroes to launch. I mean, she defies every expectation of what, you know, conventional wisdom would say would make a popular superhero. She's a woman, she's a Muslim, she's, you know, a teenager from not a fancy city like New York, but Jersey, and it's just an incredibly well-written story and kind of echoes the early Spider-Man stories in the best possible way, you know, of teenage trying to balance life and superheroing. And historically, I'm going to go with Wonder Woman as well, because Wonder Woman was created specifically as a feminist icon. That's why she was made. It was almost a bar bet. The guy who created her said, you know, said, you can make a female hero, people will like it. And his friend who was a publisher at DC said, no, they won't buy it. So they made a bet, and he created a character specifically to inspire women. And he thought that was going to be the future. He actually was a female superiorist. He thought that women were going to rule the world, and that Wonder Woman was the ideal that everybody was going to end up there at some point. So I love the idea that Wonder Woman was created specifically to kind of at the time show women what they could be. You know, that you could be the hero of the story.
This one's for Chuck. You do an awesome job of writing comics and different storylines. Now we're talking about you know, sex, and we're talking about race. Also, you mentioned the newest hero, and I think that's a lot of this is, you know, kind of a political firestorm right now with these different topics. How does that play into when you guys write comic books? Do you take the current atmosphere and kind of play those into your storylines?
Well, I try not to be topical when I'm writing stories, and I try not to be in your face. And as I said before, diversity isn't necessarily a value on its own, unless you have a reason to do it. If you have a reason for the character to be Muslim, if you have a reason for the character to be Catholic. I mean, the first character I broke in on with was Evangeline. She was a spy for the Vatican. So, you know, I got to offend Catholics everywhere. Science fiction epic. And actually, I shouldn't say that. Most of our letters telling us that we offended Catholics were from non-Catholics. most Catholics understood that nuns were tough. So, yeah, they're the toughest people. Marine drill instructors, nothing on a elementary school nun. But, you know, I introduced a Muslim character in Nightwing in like 1998, probably the only one at that point. Just because I thought it was interesting, it was something a little bit different. But I always caution writers who say, well, we want to create a Puerto Rican superhero. Well, that's all fine and good, but why don't you create the superhero first and make him an interesting character and just have him happen to be Puerto Rican instead of having it be everything about being Puerto Rican. And besides, none of you know anything about being Puerto Rican anyway. So, you know, in comics you create your own reality and you create characters that fit into that own reality. And you try to be as honest, not realistic. Realism is a problem in comics because they aren't realistic. But you try to be honest. Is this an honest portrayal of a Southerner? Is this an honest portrayal of someone from New Jersey? You know, if you can't do that, don't do it. But I always had a problem with, you know, sticking black on the front of the name of the character.
Right.
And that's it. You know, he's not interesting, he's dull as dishwater. When I was, you know, younger, Luke Cage was like the coolest character. Because Luke Cage was an awesome character, no matter what kind. I mean, he lived above a 42nd Street movie theater. And he was a badass. And it didn't matter what color he was. I mean, he could have been, you know, an Armenian. It didn't make any difference. But, you know, but then you had characters like, you know, Black Goliath or Black Lightning. And the only thing about them was they were black.
Right.
But they weren't interesting. So you've got to delve in and, you know, make sure the character's interesting. Same thing, you know, when Marvel first introduced the gay character. I thought it was like insulting to every gay person on the planet because of the way they portrayed it. And they had it written by a Howard Stern who had no respect whatsoever. You know, so, you know, it's just that, you know, be honest, be true, and have someone writing it who knows what they're talking about. I grew up with sisters, by the way, that's why I wrote so many female characters.
You know, actually playing off what Chuck just said, you know, don't write Puerto Rican because no one here is Puerto Rican. That is historically been one of the problems, is that the Comic Book Creators Club was largely male and largely white. There wasn't much diversity. People making the stories don't have diversity in that group. It's hard for them to tell stories authentically about diverse characters, which is where you run into the problem that Chuck was talking about, where you make Black Goliath, yeah, he's pretty lame. But that's changing quite a bit as well. There's been a ton of, especially female creators that have come up that are gaining prominence in the superhero world. And we're getting a better gender balance, which is helping, it's bleeding into the comics themselves. And just having a woman in the room that can say, oh, that's dumb, guy, don't do that. A lot of female editors at Marvel right now that are looking over what the guys are writing to make sure the female characters are portrayed in a good way. And you know, just putting different genders and races in the room with you when you're writing these characters keeps you honest and helps you tell a good story rather than just making it a gimmick.
Great.
You know, but a little inside baseball, comics have always been a clique, you know, and they've always been a majority guy thing. And yes, there are women in management and in editorship at the two major comic companies, but it's still a clique, and it's more of a clique now than it's ever been in the business. I mean, the two major comic companies are literally run by guys who grew up together in Brooklyn. So, you know, it's a tough crowd to get in with. You know, if you wonder sometimes why you keep seeing the same names over and over again in comics, they went to high school with those guys. So that's even more toxic, you know, and harder to break in. Because I always say that being a female writer at DC is like Highlander. There can be only one. and it's true. I mean, I saw, one female writer after another give way. I saw Lee Simonson give way to Joe W. gave way to Devin Grayson, who gave way to whoever the female writer is now. Gail Simone. Why did I forget that name? I know Gail. And I always tell Gail that. Remember, there can be only one. You know, don't take a lot of crap off these guys. So, you know, it's a tough field. It's always been a tough field, but for women, it's even tougher.
Thank you.
And not much has changed in 25 minutes.
Yeah, on the same topic there, as far as female comic writers from within the 90s era to present, have you noticed any difference between them? As far as how many females come through, the writing styles?
No, I mean, there's no difference in the writing. You can't go, oh, a girl wrote this. You know, they bring in, you know, because to write comics, you've got to know the comics. You've got to be a nerd. You've got to be a geek. And that's, you know, a society. You know, that's a cultural thing. And gender really doesn't enter into it at that point. And it shouldn't. I mean, none of your, to my mind, if you're writing escapist entertainment, you put a little bit of yourself in it, but you don't put your worldview, you don't try to change anybody's mind, you don't come out of an agenda. My only purpose is to bring you into that world and keep you there, as long as I can keep you there, and have you forget about your other troubles while you're reading my work. I'm not there to push an agenda. Same thing for, you know, female writers aren't there to call attention to the fact, hey, this is written by a girl. You know, and I've never met a writer who's that was their purpose.
Right.
You know, yes, you can take the feminism so far in your private life, but if you try to bring it into, you know, when you're writing a story about the Hulk, okay, it's not really going to cut it because people they don't want to be preached out.
Right.
You just write the best story you can.
No, but as far as the writers, have you noticed an increase since the 90s or about the same? I know you talked
If I look at Diamond previews, I see more, you know, female names.
Okay.
But nothing like any kind of parody with male writers. It's still a male-dominated field, you know, to a huge extent.
Okay.
And that's wrong because, you know, female writers would, you know, theoretically bring in more female readers, and comics need more female readers. Comics fell off the map when they left the newsstand, and they left behind a lot of female readers who were never able to do a comic book shop. And the majority of comic book readership from the dawn of comics until recently has been female. Girls bought more comics than boys. You know, all you have to do is look at sales figures from the 50s and early 60s. The comics that sold in the millions, they were comics aimed at girls, or primarily. And look at Archie Comics. Archie Comics is the mainstay. It's a bellwether for the comic books. And its readership is evenly divided between boys and girls, unlike most of the superhero films.
Thank you. Veronica. Yeah. What, actually, this question is going to be for Dr. Grady. You've been saving the universe in engineering for Lockheed Martin. So tell us a little bit about that experience that you've gone through. Also, you know, how others see your role on the campus. I'm sorry. Was it a male-dominated kind of career field? I'm assuming it was, but you know, kind of what's been your role in that? How has that changed since you've been with them? And moreover, I guess, what's the perspective that women are bringing to research and engineering?
My degrees are all in engineering, and so there are very few women in engineering, which is part of why I'm here to talk about it. So of course, when you go into industry, if you're not graduating a lot of engineers, as a female, you end up working in a place where that's mostly male. Statistically, in the United States for engineering, about 15% of that population is female, and about, let's say, 10 years after graduation, usually that drops to about 5%. So about 10, or of that total, 2/3 of those will leave the STEM field, so science, technology, engineering, and math, which actually does make it difficult. It is a boys' club, which, so in some ways, it kind of mirrors comic book writing in terms of it being very male-dominated. It's a geek culture, so it is something that is difficult to acclimate to if you're not used to it. Although, and to me, it's always been interesting because when you think about science, and you think about engineering, and you think about technology, that should be the most gender-neutral thing on the planet. It's all about just math and equations. I don't know how you can get more gender-neutral than numbers. But in terms of technology development, so when I was at Lockheed, I worked for a group where our job was to invent things. And so you had to have an imagination. because knowing the equations isn't what solves problems. It's having the imagination to dream up a solution. And then the theory helps you get there, but you have to have the imagination to begin with. And so I think a lack of, not diversity necessarily in terms of all of this helps, but race and gender, but in terms of world point of views, to be able to see that solution really, really does matter. And I think that's why in the United States, I mean, we're the most innovative country in the world. This is why the president took it up, because in order to come up with those big solutions, the next, big iPhone, or, right now we're sort of in a new space race, you need people to imagine those solutions, and you need it to come from as many different areas as possible to get that next big breakthrough. And that's where sci-fi and stories become really important, because they help people imagine and stretch their full perspective beyond just what's happening to them right now. And so to be able to, so for me, Star Trek growing up, for this, I mean, I know last year I went like on a long soliloquy about Geordie LaForge, but here's why, I mean, that was why I went into engineering, because I loved Geordie LaForge and I wanted to be him. And it didn't, it's just, he was the person that made everyone else on that show great, because he saved their bacon every single time. He kept them alive. And he was always cool, calm, and collected. And that was why I went into engineering. But you need stories to inspire you to do that. And I think it's even more important for females, because for them, just it tends to be the way that they're wired. They need to see things holistically, so they need to understand why they're going into something. So they won't go into engineering technology just because they like math. They need to do it because, in my case, I wanted to be like Geordie LaForge. I wanted to help people, and I wanted to help them be great. And so I do bring a different perspective to engineering than my male colleagues, just because of the way that I see things. And one's not necessarily better than the other, but you do need both. And so at Florida Poly, which if any of y'all know, it's that spaceship looking thing in the middle of the cow pasture off the high floor. Yeah, it's not like a secret government facility, it's a university. We are working very hard to try and break the gender imbalance, but I mean, it's really something that starts young to get girls motivated to go into that. So even though it might seem like talking about engineering at a university is not connected to comic books and sci-fi, it actually is, because you need that to inspire young girls and boys to want to go into those fields.
Yeah, we always say on the website, because this is a huge issue for us actually, we come at it from the opposite end, talking about the comic book stuff, but then we publish a lot of stories about STEAM fields and things like that, because that is kind of the end goal. You have to dream it in order to be able to do it. You have to have the dream first. And fictional stories like science fiction, like comic books, really can help inspire that dream, especially little girls that may not be able to find a real life role model for some of these things that are kind of rare, like engineers and things that are not as common. Being able to see it portrayed somewhere, even in a comic book or a science fiction movie, is a great first step into starting to think a little bit outside of gender roles the way they're set up today.
Thank you. This question is again for you, John. I want to talk more about your hashtag More Than Cute campaign. I know, again, as a father female, this is very important to me. I just kind of want you to tell the audience what it is and kind of the reaction that you received after you started it. Sure.
I have two little girls that, for better or for worse, picked up all my bad habits and love superheroes. They know. And when we started doing Halloween, at some point after I ruined them with Justice League, they decided that they wanted to be superheroes, not a Disney princess or a traditional costume. So we went to the costume shop and said, let's find one. And we found a Batgirl costume, and it was hot pink. That was the Batgirl costume that they had. They had a Spider-Girl costume that came with a tutu and a magic wand. Not sure exactly why they had that, but they did. And so we kind of broadened our search. We looked at the entire girls section of costume, And every single costume that we found for little girls at this, we were going to one of those kind of spirit Halloween stories. The emphasis was on being cute. No matter what the costume was, it was cute. Now, if you look over at the little boys, if it's a horror costume, they can look terrifying, they can look scary, they can look gross. The girls' costume that we found, a zombarina costume. It was a zombie that was a ballerina and had a tutu. And, you know, I started in my mind, I drew a line straight from the section that told little girls that the only thing that we really value about them is that they look cute, that we value their physical appearance, to the section that told adult women that the only thing that society really values about them is that they look sexy, which is where that progresses to. I have nothing against cute. This is where I get in the most trouble. People start yelling at me that I'm trying to steal princesses away from little girls. I'm not. Princesses should still be out there. I'm a guy. I love women that wear sexy Halloween costumes. Please don't stop on my account. But that should be one choice that you have among many. That should not be the only thing you can find. It shouldn't be the only way that we measure the value of women and girls in society is how they physically look. So we started the hashtag, and the idea was, you know, go outside the box. If all you can find at the Target or at the Halloween store are cutesy costumes, make the little girls' costumes. Much like we were talking about, you know, inspire her to be an astronaut or a scientist, or think outside an inspirational costume that is beyond just focusing on her physical appearance and that she looks adorable. Let me tell you, I've met lots of little kids. I have little kids of my own. They look adorable no matter what you put them in. You don't need to it's like pouring a bunch of sugar on top of a bowl of Captain Crunch. You really don't need to do that. The kid's cute already. Let her, you know, imagine a little bit. So we started making our own costumes, and we started this hashtag campaign, More Than Cute, and it got picked up huge on social media, and then we did interviews with BBC. We went live on Headline News. You know, all sorts of media outlets. It really caught on because it struck a chord with people. People started noticing that this is an issue, this is a problem. And so again, that's kind of where it came from. It's not that we're trying to eliminate cuteness from kids, but we do want little girls to be able to go and have other choices. If they want to look scary or tough or something else, let's give them that choice too.
Just one more question, we'll wrap it up. I guess we'll go to Dr. Drake or anybody down there. What would you tell the ladies in the audience today, or anybody that's going to read this in the newspaper or watch it, about how they can save the universe, whether they're a little girl or
I would say the best way to save the universe is just whatever you're naturally interested and passionate about, like go do that, even if it doesn't fit within some gender role or stereotype for you. Because whatever you're naturally interested and passionate about, that's what you're going to be best at. And when you do what you're best at, that's how you help the people around you.
Thank you. Again, I want to say thank you to everybody on this panel. We appreciate all the work that you guys put in, really the inspiration that you give to young kids. Thank you guys for being here.